Then, in addition to most of my clothing, I also lost a computer and an iPad. Cancelled flights, missing luggage, and border patrol drama. It is Sunday, August 10th, 2025, and on this week's edition of Sunday Sofa Time, we're talking about my recent trip to the USA.
Just like the wind, just let it pass through, just let it pass you.
Just a couple days ago, I returned from the USA, where this time, instead of being on a cruise, I was visiting family in the Midwest. And you know, sometimes when you're traveling, you get a seat upgrade, your plane lands early, you open the Uber app and realize you have a coupon for a free ride. Sometimes it goes like that, and sometimes it goes like this. I'm Morgan from the very unofficial travel guides. I've been making travel videos for over 15 years of popular and not so popular tourist destinations to give you a very honest, unofficial look at what it's like to be there. And if you enjoy the unfortunate stories in this story time video, you might also enjoy reading one of my books. Getting Stitches on a Cruise Ship is 10 short stories of true crazy things that have really happened to me around the world. And Places Please is part travel guide for some of the major cities around the world, including London, New York, and Punta del Este, Uruguay, as well as the first part of my life where I found my passion for performing and all the places it took me around the world. If you like to read and want to give me a little extra support, check them out on Amazon now. All right, the first thing that went wrong on this trip was my flight from Hamburg to Amsterdam was already delayed. And you know, a 15-minute, 20-minute, half-hour delay isn't usually a big deal if that is the only flight you're doing. But if you're transferring to another flight, especially an international flight, and if it's through an airport as gigantic as Amsterdam Schiphol is, then 20 minutes can be a big deal. And I originally had just a little more than an hour to transfer in Amsterdam. And if you've ever been to the Amsterdam airport, you know that an hour is not really a lot. So let's say I had to do a brisk walk through the Amsterdam airport, through the extra security check, and to get to my gate. And when I got to my gate, they were already boarding the flight. So I guess in one sense, maybe this was a positive thing, because who wants to be waiting around for longer than you have to at an airport these days? And the fact that I just walked off of one plane and sashayed right onto the next plane, that's kind of nice. And one of the few things that actually kind of went right and better than good was I had an entire row to myself, and I don't mean just like the 3 seats next to me. I mean, I literally had the entire row to myself. This doesn't happen very often, especially on international flights, and I posted about it on Facebook, and some people were saying flying is kind of a environmentally unfriendly way to travel, and to know that there are international flights burning up all this fuel and there's a lot of empty seats on them, that's kind of not good. And I understand what they're saying, but I still was happy to have a little extra space for myself. So leaving Amsterdam, getting up in the air, flying across the ocean, and making it almost to Minneapolis, that worked out fine. And then in Minneapolis, we had an aborted landing. And this is actually the 3rd time this has happened to me, so I wasn't that alarmed, but I witnessed the reactions from others. And I guess if this has never happened to you, it is kind of scary. And what it means is you are already on approach to landing, and then for some reason, you have to go back up into the air and come around again. Has this ever happened to you? Like, it's actually, I don't know, not that uncommon, but of all the times this has happened to me now, this one was kind of the most dramatic because we were literally almost already on the ground. The other times this has happened to me, we haven't been as low as we were this time, and I don't know what was happening. The other 2 times we did get an explanation. This time they just said we had to go up and come back around again, but why? They never said why. Another thing that went very well on this trip, and by the way, y'all, you know, this is just a story time video. Nothing in here is gonna really change anybody's life. This is just me talking about what happened from my perspective, a list of unfortunate events. Of course, I'm still very happy I got to visit my family. I'm happy I got to travel. But yeah, quite a few things went different than planned, and I'm just talking about it. So when you arrive in a foreign country or when you return to the United States, you have to go through customs and immigration, and sometimes this takes a very, very long time. But I used the mobile passport control app for the first time, which is similar to Global Entry, but it's free. And people, I breezed right through customs and immigration with waiting in literally zero line. I made a whole video about what mobile passport control is, how it's different from Global Entry, and why you might want to use one over the other. You can find that linked in the description. And if I forget to link it, somebody please remind me. So I got to the baggage carousel even before the bags came out, and that had me waiting there a little bit longer. And some people were saying, yeah, I mean, what's the difference? You wait either before you get your passport checked, and then when you come through, your bags are there, or you breeze through the line and then you have to wait for your bag. So either way, it's waiting. I personally would rather wait for my bags where I can kind of walk around and be on my phone and not in the chaotic, stressful line to get my passport checked. But the next thing to go wrong was about to happen, and that is they made an announcement saying, okay, the following 11 names, we know that your bags did not make the flight from Amsterdam, so please proceed to the baggage claim area between carousel 8 and 9 to fill out a claim, and you'll never guess whose name was on that list. Yeah, so I think because of our late arrival in Amsterdam and the small connecting time, I'm assuming that all of the people whose bags didn't make it were probably on my flight from Hamburg. So I arrived in Minnesota without my suitcase, and one thing that made this made me kind of nervous about this is the first 3 nights I was staying with my mom at her house, but then after that, we had rented this gigantic Airbnb on a river in Wisconsin, and I thought, if my luggage doesn't get here before we leave for the river, this is going to be really complicated. And another factor is I was bringing a used laptop and a used iPad to gift to my nieces, and those were both in my suitcase. And I thought, okay, if it's just delayed, that's fine. I'll just get this stuff a little bit later. But if they lose my suitcase, then in addition to most of my clothing, I also lost a computer and an iPad. So that was kind of stressful. That night, a friend and I went to Target, and I bought literally 1 package of underwear, 1 pair of shorts, 1 t-shirt, a toothbrush, toothpaste, face cream, and deodorant, like sort of the bare minimum that you need for a day and a half. And actually, I was able to submit the expenses to KLM, and they paid me back, I'm gonna say like 80% of what I spent. Personally, I think it should have been 100%, but 80% better than nothing. And in next week's Sunday Sofa Time, I'm gonna sit down here and tell you all about what you have to do and can do and are entitled to if your baggage is missing or if it gets lost altogether. So make sure you're subscribed and check back next week if you want to see that. My bag did show up the following evening, but even that didn't go smoothly because the driver, well, in the neighborhood I live in, the blocks are separated by a certain street in the middle, and all the streets on this side are like 12th Avenue South, and all the streets on the other side are 12th Avenue North. My mom lives at, I'm going to make up this address, but let's say 123 12th Avenue South, but the driver went to 123 12th Avenue North. So good thing he was in contact, otherwise he would have gotten out of the car, left my suitcase on the front steps of somebody else's house with a computer and an iPad in it. I did finally get my suitcase, and I did get reimbursed for most of the expenses that I had just to get through a day without any of my stuff. So then we go to the river, then we have a great family visit with very little drama, some fantastic food, including my brother's famous pizza recipe. We played lots of games, went swimming in the pool, went boating on the river. It was a really great week. Can't complain about that part at all. And then the day we checked out of the cabin is also the day that I was meant to fly home, and I woke up to this joyful message. So this wasn't the flight from Minneapolis to Amsterdam, it was the flight from Amsterdam to Hamburg. And I thought, okay, you know, that's not really that big of a deal. There are flights from Amsterdam to Hamburg going like every hour. I'll just wait an hour or so, and then I'll look in the app and see what they rebooked me on. And this is where a whole stressful scenario begins that sort of took over my last half a day with my family. When I first checked the app, like an hour later, we were already in the car on the way back to my mom's house, and they had rebooked me on a flight that was leaving like 35 minutes earlier than my original flight, which is not a problem because I still had plenty of time, but it was then flying from Minneapolis to Paris, and then the flight from Paris to Hamburg was going to get me home only like 20 minutes later than my original flight. Okay, perfect. Great solution. I'll take it. But when it first showed up in the app, I couldn't check in and I also couldn't choose a seat. So I just thought, okay, mental note, check back in like a half an hour so I can take care of this. And when I did check back in, that itinerary had totally disappeared from the app all of a sudden. And then I was rebooked on my original flight from Minneapolis to Amsterdam. And then instead of being on the next flight from Amsterdam to Hamburg, they had rebooked me on a flight that was 5 hours and 50 minutes later.
Excuse me, no. I will gladly take the Minneapolis to Paris and Paris to Hamburg itinerary, not the one that's gonna get me home 6 hours later.
And of course, unfortunately, nowadays, if you're trying to call an airline or use the chat function, it is not cute. It takes forever. And usually you have to jump through a lot of hoops with some kind of artificial intelligence first before you can even talk to an actual person. So for the rest of the drive home, I'm sending chat messages, trying to get back onto this itinerary that's not going to get me home so much later. I don't understand why they booked me on that and then removed it and then rebooked me on the other one. Why would anybody want to get home 6 hours later when there's obviously the opportunity to get there earlier? That doesn't make sense to me. And I had no success using the online chat feature, so I waited till I got to my mom's house, and then I called somebody. The first time I called, the person literally hung up on me. I don't know if they hung up or if somehow the connection got cut. So I called back, explained the whole situation, explained the flights that I wanted to be on that originally were my rebooking. And this guy I was talking to seemed very helpful and he seemed very competent, and it took him a while to rebook everything, and I had to go into the app and cancel the reservation at one time or cancel my check-in for the other flight, which made me kind of nervous, and rightfully so. Keep watching. So on the phone, the guy says to me, all right, I have rebooked you. Please check your emails and let me know if you got the confirmation, and I'll wait until it gets there. Confirmation mail showed up. I was like, yes, it's confirmed. Thank you very much. He said, just so you know, I could not assign you a seat at this moment. You will get your seat assignment when you get to the airport. And I thought, okay, well, you know, maybe I'll get an upgrade. I do have silver status with Flying Blue, and I have gotten upgrades in the past without even asking for them. So I thought, okay, this sounds like a good opportunity for something like that. And we said goodbye. Fast forward to a couple hours later, get to the airport, scan this boarding pass with no seat on it at the baggage tag station, and it prints me out a ticket from my bag to go to Paris, and I stand there waiting for the second part of the ticket, and no second part of the ticket comes. And I'm thinking, did this dude just book me on a flight to Paris and not to Hamburg? And I mentioned this in other videos. I really like these self-baggage check things because that makes the whole airport experience just go a little bit smoother. But at this point, then I have to get into the big, long, chaotic line. And there was a lot going on at the Minneapolis airport on this day. When I finally get up to the counter, I explained to the guy, listen, I was supposed to fly from Minneapolis to Amsterdam, Amsterdam to Hamburg, and my Amsterdam-Hamburg flight was canceled. I was rebooked on one flight, rebooked on another flight, then rebooked back onto the first rebooking. Now I don't have a seat, and it also says, I think, that I'm only flying to Paris. And the guy was like, okay, the whole thing without a seat, that's absolutely no problem. You're gonna get a seat probably at the gate, but don't worry, you'll definitely be on the flight. And let me see about this Paris thing. And he took my information, typed it into the computer, stared at the screen for a second and said, where are you going? And I said, Hamburg. And he said, yeah, no, this ticket is just to Paris. Hold on, let me make a call. After spending all that time with the chatbot and then 2 calls with customer service, one where they aborted the call, just like the aborted landing in Minneapolis. This guy who I thought seemed really helpful had somehow only booked me on a flight to Paris. And then the guy at the counter in the airport in Minneapolis was not able to rebook me on a flight to Hamburg from his station, so he also had to, I guess, call KLM customer service. He was also on hold for like 15 minutes while I just stood there, and he also had to explain the situation just like I had done all afternoon long on the internet and on the telephone in order to get me booked on a flight from Paris to Hamburg. By the way, if you made it this far, I'm really proud of you. I know this is a long story, and to be honest, there's a lot more crazy things coming, so just keep watching. But I need a drink of water. Not sponsored. So the dude at the counter finally gets me booked on a flight from Minneapolis to Paris and Paris to Hamburg. He also tells me, but I can't give you a seat, you'll have to get it at the gate. And this is something I still don't understand. Don't you work for KLM and AirFrance? Why can't you give me a seat? If there are any flight attendants or airport workers out there who can explain to me how I can be at the actual airport checking in at the counter and they can't assign me a seat, I just don't understand why that's not possible. Okay, so then it's time for me to go through security. I have about 45 minutes until my flight is supposed to leave, even though I got to the airport 2.5 hours early. And when I got to the security check, it was actually a very short line. There's maybe, I don't know, like 20 people in front of me. But one of the people in front of me was, I'm not a medical professional, but I'm assuming this was somebody with some form of autism or Asperger's, because he was very loudly repeating all the directions that the people in airport security were giving. He was literally yelling, anybody in the line with a laptop in their backpack, the laptop needs to come out and go in a separate tray. Liquid, gels, jellies, creams, all have to be in a separate bag. If you have a jacket on, take the jacket off. When I first heard it, I thought he was being a smartass, but then when I saw him, I realized, no, that's just how he is. And eventually, I think when he first started, everybody around was a little bit startled by it, but then I think the more that people saw what he looked like, then the more people were like, oh, that's kind of cute, you know, he must find this situation really exciting, because he did look like he was really enjoying being there. But then it became a problem because I think he was just so obsessed with this airport security situation that then he started going around and grabbing all the trays and restacking them, and they had to confront him and ask him to stop. So, you know, that's also something you don't see every day, every time you fly. I made it to the gate on time, and then, of course, my flight from Minneapolis to Paris was also delayed. First by 15 minutes and then by an hour. When we got in the plane, the empty row ferry visited me again, and I not only got, well, just like the 3 seats for myself, but it was also the bulkhead, which a lot of people call poor man's business class. The disadvantage to being in this situation in these seats on this plane was the armrests didn't go up, so I couldn't like flip them up and spread out. But it was nice to have just my own row to myself and nobody that I had to crawl over me if they had to use a bathroom. And the problem that we had that was causing us to leave delayed was somehow the air circulation and air conditioning system wasn't working. And they kept trying to stop it and restart it and stop it and restart it and stop it and restart it. And one part of me was thinking, you know, I think we'll be fine. It's only 7.5 hours. I really don't want to be stuck here for another couple of hours and then rebooked on another later flight home. Honestly, I guess you don't kind of want to be on a flight for 7.5 hours with no air conditioning, which also means no heating. They finally got it working. We flew to Paris, no problem, got to Paris, and the terminal where my flight was leaving from in Paris Charles de Gaulle was, I think, the newest terminal. It's 2G. And I have to tell you, the inside of most of Charles de Gaulle Airport is really pretty to look at, but it is very dysfunctional. It was built to look good, not to work good. I think anybody who's been through the Paris airport a few times will agree with me. It is not a well-functioning airport. And 2G is a building that they built way over on one side of it, and to be honest, it feels less like an airport and more like a bus station. There's a central building that has a couple restaurants and shopping venues inside, as well as 2 bathroom areas, and then on one side and the other are the gates that go to either the planes or the buses. And I don't know, something about it just really feels like bus station vibes. And there were a lot of people waiting there, and only one of the bathrooms was working, so that bathroom was like overrun with people. In the actual area where the gates are, there is almost no place to sit down. So basically you go to this main area, have a seat if there is a seat, and watch the screen, and a half an hour before your flight is supposed to leave, they tell you what gate you have to go to. That's what I did, and I went to the first gate. We were all standing around there, nothing was happening, and then they announced, "We're sorry, due to operational complications, this flight will not be leaving on time. Please go back to the waiting area and check the screens. That's where you'll find the information about when this flight will be leaving and from what gate it's leaving from." So, once again, another delay. Like, what are the chances? How can all these things happen in one trip? So everybody goes back up the ramp into the bus station, and an hour later, our flight shows up on the screen again with a new gate, board the plane, fly from Paris to Hamburg, and then something happens that I have never witnessed before on any of my travels ever. When we land, we have like an outside gate, so you have to get out of the plane, out on like the runway, and then get into a bus that takes you to the airport. And once the doors were open, the flight attendant made an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, we need to do an expedited disembarking process for..." And then she said a woman's name. "Everybody, please move to the side and take your seats again so this woman's name can disembark the plane immediately. Everybody, please take your seats. Only this woman should exit the plane at this time." So because of this woman, everybody had to sit back down or get out of the aisle. She had no idea what was happening, but I think she thought that this was for something good, because she was like... But when she got to the front of the plane, the police were waiting for her. Oh, I don't know what this poor woman did or didn't do. She thought she was just getting some sort of VIP treatment, but what was happening was she was getting arrested. Or I don't know, there was some problem with her passport or something. I don't know what actually happened to her. All I saw was what I just described. They made her leave the plane in front of everybody else, and when she got to the front, she was picked up by the police. And I'm happy to say that other than that, everything else went perfect. Whew. What do you think of all of this? I mean, I know it can be way worse. I still got to all of my destinations on the same day I was supposed to get there. I didn't have to stay overnight anywhere unplanned. There were no injuries, no major turbulence. I didn't spend most of the plane puking up my guts in the bathroom. Been there, done that twice. So I guess I don't have a whole lot to complain about, but I just wanted to sit down here and tell you about all these things that happened within one trip, because I do feel like it's a lot. In less than a week, I'm going to be boarding the brand new Star of the Seas, the newest, largest cruise ship in the world from Royal Caribbean. Make sure you check back for those videos coming soon. Give this video a thumbs up, and I thank you for spending this part of your Sunday, or whatever day it is you choose to watch this with me. I'm Morgan from the Very Unofficial Travel Guides. Bye-bye.